The microphone felt heavy in my hands as I stood before 200 colleagues at our company's annual dinner. My boss, Camille Dorsey, had just asked me to say a few words as her assistant. I smiled nervously. Years of loyal service, and this is what I get, being called an assistant. Thank you all for making me feel like family here at MedTech Solutions, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Working with such dedicated people has helped me heal after losing my husband. This job gave me purpose when I needed it most. Warm applause filled the ballroom. I saw coworkers nodding, some wiping their eyes. Even the CEO was smiling. I felt a surge of belonging I hadn't experienced since David died. But then Camille stood up, her red dress catching the spotlight as she took the microphone from my hands. Her smile was ice cold. "How sweet," she said, her voice cutting through the applause. "Well, Whitney won't be here next year, but let's wish her luck finding herself somewhere else." The room went silent. My stomach dropped to the floor. 200 pairs of eyes stared at me as I stood frozen on stage, my face burning with humiliation. I had no idea this was just the beginning. Monday morning arrived like a punch to the gut. I sat in Camille's pristine office, still replaying Friday night's public humiliation. She didn't even look up from her computer as she spoke. "Whitney, your employment is terminated effective immediately," she said, finally glancing at me with those cold blue eyes. "HR will escort you out." My hands trembled. I don't understand. My performance reviews have always been excellent. What did I do wrong? She leaned back in her leather chair, a slight smirk on her lips. "Emotional instability. You've become too comfortable here, and frankly, your attachment to this place is unprofessional." "Attachment? I've worked here for 3 years. I've never missed a deadline. Never." "You should have known your place," she interrupted, pressing her desk phone. "Security? Whitney Monroe is ready to be escorted out." The next hour was a blur, packing my desk while coworkers whispered, the security guard's apologetic expression. The 2-week severance check that felt like a slap in the face. As I walked to my car with my cardboard box, I heard Camille's laugh echoing from her office window. That sound would haunt me for weeks. The unemployment office was a nightmare. The clerk, a tired woman with thick glasses, shook her head as she read my file. "I'm sorry, Miss Monroe, but according to your employer's report, you were terminated for insubordination and volatile behavior. You don't qualify for benefits." I stared at her in disbelief. That's not true. I was never written up, never reprimanded. The documentation says otherwise. You can appeal, but it takes months. I drove home to my tiny apartment, the walls closing in around me. Rent was due in 2 weeks. My savings account had maybe $300. The fridge hummed empty behind me. That evening, I found myself at Riverside Cemetery, kneeling beside David's headstone. The marble was cold against my palm. "I don't know what to do," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "She destroyed me, David. 3 years of my life, and she threw me away like garbage." The wind rustled through the oak trees above us. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice telling me to fight back. But how could I fight someone with so much power? My former coworker Janet called me on Wednesday, her voice shaking with anger. "Whitney, I have to tell you something. The promotion you were supposed to get, the department coordinator position?" My heart stopped. "What promotion?" Camille had already approved it. The paperwork was on HR's desk. Then she gave it to her niece instead. "That's why she fired you." I gripped the phone tighter. Her niece? Madison? The 23-year-old who started last month. She doesn't even have a college degree, Whitney. Camille's been planning this for weeks. The pieces fell into place. The coordinator position would have meant a $15,000 raise, health insurance, and job security. Camille had dangled it in front of me for months, making me work overtime, canceling my vacation days. "She used me," I whispered. "There's more," Janet continued. "She told Madison that you were getting too big for your britches and needed to be taught a lesson. She actually laughed about humiliating you at the dinner." I hung up and stared at the wall. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. But beneath the hurt, something else was growing. Something harder. Something determined. Camille thought she'd broken me. She had no idea what she'd actually unleashed. Friday afternoon, Janet showed up at my door with red eyes and a bottle of wine. "I quit," she announced, pushing past me into my living room. I couldn't take it anymore. We sat on my worn couch as she told me everything. How Camille had been bullying staff for years. How she'd made 3 other employees quit by creating impossible work conditions. How she'd stolen credit for other people's projects. You were the only one who ever stood up to her, Janet said, wiping her nose. Remember when she screamed at Tommy for being 5 minutes late? You walked right into her office and told her it was unprofessional. I did remember. Tommy was dealing with his sick mother, and Camille had humiliated him in front of everyone. I'd calmly explained why her behavior was inappropriate. She's been wanting to get rid of you ever since, Janet continued. You made her look weak. She can't stand that people respect you more than they respect her. The whole office is falling apart now. People are scared to speak up. Marcus is having panic attacks. Sarah's looking for another job. My heart ached for my former colleagues. These were good people, hardworking people. They didn't deserve Camille's toxic leadership. We have to do something, I said quietly. Janet looked at me with surprise. What can we do? She holds all the power. I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. Maybe she does, but power built on lies doesn't last forever. Monday morning found me in the waiting room of the Georgia Department of Labor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I clutched my termination papers. Miss Monroe? A middle-aged man with kind eyes called my name. I'm Officer Rodriguez. How can I help you? I explained everything. The sudden firing, the false accusations, the lack of documentation. He listened carefully, taking notes. This doesn't look right, he said, flipping through Camille's report. She claims multiple incidents of insubordination, but there's no progressive discipline file. No warnings, no write-ups. Because there weren't any, I said firmly. I believe you. We see this sometimes. Employers who fabricate reasons to deny unemployment benefits. We're opening a case. He handed me a form. Fill this out completely. Include dates, witnesses, everything you remember. This investigation could take months. But if we find she filed false information, there will be consequences. Walking out of that building, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Camille thought she'd covered her tracks, but she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. That afternoon, I called the legal aid clinic downtown. A young lawyer named Sarah Chen agreed to meet with me. Wrongful termination cases are tough, she warned. But if you can prove she lied about your hack performance, we might have something. Sarah's office was cramped but organized, law books stacked floor to ceiling. She reviewed my case with sharp attention to detail. This is interesting, she said, highlighting sections of my termination paperwork. She claims you were emotionally volatile but provides no specific incidents. That's unusual. Because it never happened. I know. The question is, can we prove it? She leaned forward. Do you have any emails, texts, or documents from your time there? I pulled out a thick folder, 3 years' worth. Performance reviews, commendation letters, even thank you notes from clients. Sarah's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. Whitney, this is gold. Look at this. She wrote you a glowing review just 2 months ago. Exceptional performance, valuable team member, recommended for advancement. That was right before she started acting strange toward me. And here, Sarah pointed to another document. She's praising your professional demeanor and emotional stability in a letter to the CEO about handling a difficult client. We worked for 2 hours, organizing evidence chronologically. Every document painted the same picture. A dedicated, stable employee who'd done nothing wrong. We're filing a wrongful termination suit, Sarah announced. She opened this door when she lied about your performance. Now we're walking through it. For the first time since that awful dinner, I smiled. Really smiled. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, writing down everything I could remember about Camille's behavior. Every snide comment, every unfair criticism, every moment she'd made me feel small. The list grew longer than I expected. How she'd made me work late every Friday for no reason. How she'd criticized my clothes, my voice, even my handwriting. How she'd forbidden me from attending training sessions that could have advanced my career. I found my old work diary, a small notebook where I jotted down daily tasks. Flipping through it, I discovered a pattern I'd never noticed before. Every entry about Camille was negative. C yelled at team for missing deadline that was moved up without notice. C took credit for my project presentation to board. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus from work. I heard about your case. I have things to tell you. Can we meet? Marcus was the quiet accountant who'd started having panic attacks. We met at a coffee shop the next morning. She's been doctoring files, he whispered, glancing around nervously. I saw her changing performance reviews in the system after people left. Can you prove it? He slid a flash drive across the table. I copied the audit logs before I quit yesterday. She changed your file 3 times after she fired you. Sarah nearly dropped her coffee when I showed her Marcus's evidence. This is huge, Whitney. She altered your file after termination? That's tampering with employment records. It's illegal. What does this mean for my case? It means we just went from a difficult case to a slam dunk. She pulled up the files on her laptop. Look at this. She added 3 disciplinary incidents that never existed, changed your performance rating from excellent to needs improvement. I watched the screen in amazement. There it was, proof of Camille's lies in black and white. There's something else, Sarah continued, scrolling through the data. She shorted your vacation pay by 80 hours. That's money she legally owes you. I'd been so focused on the wrongful termination that I hadn't even calculated my final pay. But she was right. I'd accrued vacation time that wasn't included in my severance. We're filing additional claims, Sarah said, making notes. Wage theft, document tampering, and now I'm wondering what else we'll find. She looked up at me with fierce determination. Camille thinks she's untouchable because she's management. She's about to learn that nobody is above the law. Over the next week, I dug deeper into my records. That small oversight in my vacation pay led to another discovery. She'd been shorting my monthly pay by $112 for 7 months. A computer error she claimed when I'd mentioned it once. The pattern was becoming clear. I spread my pay stubs across Sarah's desk like a roadmap of deception. Look at this. I pointed to the highlighted discrepancies. $112 missing in March, $112 in April, same amount every month since October. Sarah calculated quickly. That's nearly $800 she stole from you. When I asked her about it, she said payroll was looking into it. That was 5 months ago. This isn't an accident, Whitney. She's been systematically underpaying you, hoping you wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight it. I thought about all those months I'd struggled to pay rent, eating ramen for dinner while she pocketed money that belonged to me. The violation felt personal in a way I couldn't explain. We're adding this to the complaint, Sarah said, typing furiously. Wage theft, wrongful termination, document tampering. She's racking up quite a list. That afternoon my phone rang. It was Amy from HR. Whitney, I need to ask you about your final pay calculation, she said nervously. What about it? Well, Camille said you waived your vacation pay, but I can't find the paperwork. Did you sign something? My blood boiled. Amy, I never waived anything. She owes me for 80 hours of vacation time. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Even HR was starting to question Camille's version of events. I need to tell you something, Amy said when she called back an hour later. But I can't do it officially. We met at a park near her house, away from the office. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Camille has been pressuring me to support her story about your termination, Amy began. She wants me to say you were difficult to work with, that there were complaints. Were there complaints? None. Your file was spotless until she started adding things after you left. Amy pulled out a folder. I made copies before she could destroy them. Your original performance reviews, the real ones. I stared at the documents. Every review was glowing. Why are you helping me? Because what she's doing is wrong, and because, she hesitated, you're not the first person she's done this to. My heart stopped. What do you mean? 3 employees in the last 2 years, same pattern. Sudden termination, false accusations, altered files. They all just quietly disappeared because they couldn't afford to fight back. But I can, Amy nodded. That's why she's scared. She knows you're different. I left that meeting with a folder full of evidence and a burning determination to stop Camille from destroying anyone else's life. She'd picked the wrong person to mess with. The job interview was going well until the manager mentioned Camille's name. "We called your former supervisor for a reference," Mr. Peterson said, his friendly demeanor suddenly cooling. "She had some concerning things to say about your work ethic." I kept my voice steady. "What did she tell you?" "That you were unreliable, had anger management issues, and left several projects unfinished." He set down my resume. "I'm sorry, but we can't take that risk." I stood up calmly, shook his hand, and walked out without arguing. In the parking lot, I called Sarah. "She's sabotaging my job searches," I explained. "This is the third interview that went sideways after they called her. That's interference with prospective employment, illegal in Georgia if she's lying." Sarah's voice was sharp. "Can you get any of these employers to document what she said?" "I'll try." That evening, I called Mr. Peterson back. "I wanted to clarify something about the reference you received. I'm sorry, but our decision is final." "I understand, but would you be willing to speak with my attorney about the specific claims that were made? Some of them might be legally problematic." There was a long pause. "Your attorney? I'm pursuing a wrongful termination case. If my former employer is making false statements to prevent me from finding work, that's actionable." The next day, Mr. Peterson called Sarah directly. Camille had made specific, disprovable claims about my performance. Claims that contradicted the glowing references she'd given other employees about me just months earlier. Marcus wasn't the only one ready to talk. By the end of the week, 3 former employees had contacted Sarah's office. "This is unprecedented," Sarah told me, reviewing the statements. They all described the same pattern: intimidation, false accusations, retaliation for speaking up. Jennifer had been fired for stealing office supplies that were clearly marked for employee use. Robert lost his job for insubordination after questioning an unsafe work practice. Lisa was terminated for poor performance a week after she complained about Camille's treatment of a disabled coworker. "She's been running her own little kingdom," I said, reading through their stories. "The good news is we're not alone anymore. I'm connecting your cases. 3 wrongful termination suits are harder to dismiss than 1. That afternoon, I got a text from someone I didn't recognize. "I used to work in HR at MedTech. Can we meet? I have information about Camille Dorsey." Patricia Wong had been Camille's HR business partner for 2 years before transferring to another company. She met me at a restaurant across town, constantly checking over her shoulder. "I should have spoken up years ago," she said, guilt heavy in her voice. "But I was scared of losing my job." "What do you know?" "Everything. She forced me to alter employee files, backdate disciplinary actions, even forge signatures on write-ups. I have copies of emails where she specifically orders me to build a case against employees she wanted gone." She slid a USB drive across the table. "It's all here, years of evidence." Sarah called it a smoking gun. The emails Patricia provided showed a deliberate pattern of harassment and illegal practices spanning 3 years. "Look at this one," Sarah pointed to her screen. Camille writing to Patricia, "Find something on Robert Martinez. I don't care what it is, just make it stick." And here, I read over her shoulder, she's asking Patricia to backdate a write-up for Jennifer. "Make it look like this happened 6 months ago." The evidence was overwhelming. Camille hadn't just fired me illegally. She'd been running a systemic operation to remove employees she didn't like. "We're filing with the National Labor Relations Board," Sarah announced. "This goes beyond wrongful termination. She's violated federal labor laws." That week, something else happened. I got a call from a union organizer. "Miss Monroe, we've been trying to organize workers at MedTech for months. We keep hearing about management intimidation. Would you be willing to share your experience?" I met with Tom Bradley, a seasoned organizer who'd been tracking complaints about MedTech's management practices. "Camille Dorsey's name comes up in every conversation," he said. "Workers are afraid to organize because they've seen what happens to people who cross her. She's been blocking union efforts, actively sabotaging them. We have reports of her threatening employees, promising retaliation if they even attended informational meetings." I realized Camille's reign of terror was bigger than I'd imagined. She wasn't just a bad boss. She was systematically violating workers' rights. The first settlement offer arrived on a Tuesday. MedTech's lawyers wanted to meet to discuss a mutually beneficial resolution. $50,000, their attorney announced in Sarah's conference room. Full release of all claims, confidentiality agreement. Miss Monroe walks away, everyone moves on. Sarah didn't even pretend to consider it. That's insulting. We're talking about years of wage theft, wrongful termination, defamation, and violation of federal labor laws. Our client disputes those allegations. Then we'll see you in court. Sarah closed her folder. But I should mention, the National Labor Relations Board is very interested in our evidence. The corporate lawyer's face went pale. NLRB violations could mean federal fines and forced policy changes company-wide. Perhaps we should continue this conversation, he said quickly. I walked out of that meeting feeling powerful for the first time in months. They were scared, and they should be. They'll be back, Sarah predicted. Probably with a better offer. That evening, I got a panicked call from Janet. Whitney, something's happening at work. Camille's been called into meetings all week. The regional vice president flew in from corporate. Change was coming. I could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. Camille's desperation showed itself in the stupidest possible way. She called Patricia Wong, not knowing Patricia was already working with us. Patricia recorded the call. You need to keep your mouth shut about the HR files. Camille's voice was shaky on the recording. I know you copied things before you left. If you cause problems for me, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Sarah played the recording back 3 times, her smile growing wider each time. Witness intimidation. Recorded threat. She just handed us everything we need. Is this enough to press criminal charges? Potentially. But more importantly, it destroys any credibility she has left. No judge will believe her version of events after hearing this. The recording made its way to the NLRB investigator, who called me that afternoon. Miss Monroe, this case just became our top priority. We're fast-tracking the investigation. Word spread quickly through MedTech's corporate structure. By Friday, Camille was placed on administrative leave pending internal review. Janet texted me that afternoon. She's gone. Security escorted her out this morning. The whole office is buzzing. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, satisfaction, but also something like sadness. This could have all been avoided if she just treated people with basic respect. The second settlement offer was more serious. $200,000, full benefits restoration, and a written admission that my termination was regrettable and not based on performance. They're scared, Sarah explained. The NLRB investigation is expanding. They found labor violations going back 5 years. What about the other employees she hurt? They're all getting offers too. The company wants this to disappear before it becomes a federal case study. I stared at the settlement terms. The money would change my life, give me security I'd never had, but something bothered me. What happens to Camille? She's out. Forced resignation, no severance, and they're reporting her actions to state regulators. She'll never manage people again. That should have felt like victory, but it felt like something else. Justice, maybe. I want one more thing in the settlement, I told Sarah. A written apology, not just to me, but to every employee she's hurt, and I want it posted in the office where everyone can see it. Sarah raised her eyebrows. That's unusual. She humiliated me in front of 200 people. I want everyone to know the truth. The lawyers negotiated for 3 more days. In the end, the company agreed to post a notice acknowledging management failures and commitment to respectful workplace practices. It wasn't exactly the public vindication I wanted, but it was acknowledgement. Sometimes that's enough. The phone call came on a rainy Thursday morning. Miss Monroe? This is David Kim from Hope Harbor Nonprofit. We'd like to discuss a position with our organization. The interview was unlike any I'd ever experienced. They knew my story, not from Camille's lies, but from news coverage of the NLRB case that had become public record. We're looking for someone with your integrity, David explained, someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's difficult. The job was perfect. Administrative coordinator for an organization that helped displaced workers find new careers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I have to ask, I said during the second interview. You're not concerned about the controversy? The executive director, Maria Santos, laughed. Controversy? You mean standing up to workplace bullying and illegal practices? That's exactly the kind of person we want here. I started 2 weeks later. Walking into that warm, welcoming office felt like coming home. My first day, Maria introduced me to the team. Whitney's going to help us expand our worker advocacy program. She knows firsthand how important this work is. I thought about Camille, probably sitting at home, wondering how her carefully constructed career had crumbled so quickly. The answer was simple. Lies don't last, but truth endures. 6 months later, I visited the old office to drop off final paperwork for the settlement. The security guard, Bob, lit up when he saw me. "Whitney, how are you doing? We heard about your new job." "I'm doing great, Bob. How are things here?" "Different. Better." He looked around to make sure no one was listening. "The new regional director actually says good morning to people. Imagine that." Walking through the familiar hallways felt strange. The building looked the same, but the atmosphere was completely different. People were smiling, talking, collaborating. One by one, former coworkers stopped by to hug me. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "I got promoted to senior accountant. The new boss actually reads my reports." "Thank you," said Janet, who'd been rehired with a raise. "You saved this place." Tommy from accounting grabbed my arm as I passed. "My mom wanted me to give you this," he said, handing me a card. "She said you're an angel." Inside the card was a simple message: "Thank you for protecting my son." I stood in the elevator, surrounded by gratitude and respect, thinking about that awful night at the annual dinner. If Camille could see this moment, would she understand what she'd lost by choosing cruelty over kindness? The final legal papers arrived on a warm spring day. Case closed, settlement completed, all claims resolved. I signed my name with a steady hand, officially ending the worst chapter of my professional life. That evening, I drove to Riverside Cemetery with a bottle of David's favorite wine and 2 glasses. "I did it," I told his headstone, pouring wine for both of us. I didn't let her break me. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink, and for the first time since his death, I felt truly at peace. Not just about the case, but about my future. I pulled out a piece of paper, a letter I'd written but never sent. "Dear Camille," I read aloud, "I want you to know that I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger would only hurt me. You tried to destroy my life, but you accidentally taught me how strong I really am. I hope someday you learn to treat people with the respect they deserve. Everyone wins when leaders choose kindness over cruelty." I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into my purse. I would never send it, but writing it had lifted something heavy from my heart. "I think you'd be proud of me," I whispered to David. I didn't become bitter. I became better. The wind rustled through the oak trees, and I could swear I felt him smiling. A year later, my phone rang with an unexpected call. "Whitney, this is Dr. Rachel Torres from MedTech Corporate. I wanted to personally thank you for the changes your case brought to our company." I was surprised to hear from anyone at MedTech, but Dr. Torres explained she was the new VP of Human Resources, brought in to overhaul their employment practices. "Your case exposed systemic problems that had been festering for years. We've implemented new policies, mandatory management training, and an anonymous reporting system for workplace issues. I'm glad something positive came from it. More than you know. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. Turnover has dropped 70%. You helped us become the company we should have always been." She paused. "I know this might sound strange, but would you be willing to speak at our annual leadership conference? About workplace respect and the importance of treating employees fairly?" The irony was perfect. A year ago, Camille had humiliated me at their annual dinner. Now they wanted me to teach their leaders how to treat people with dignity. "I'd be honored," I said. Standing on that same stage where my nightmare began, addressing a room full of executives about respect and fairness, felt like the universe completing a circle. My work at Hope Harbor flourished. Within 18 months, I'd been promoted to the Director of Worker Advocacy, leading a team of counselors who helped people navigate workplace disputes. Every day, people came to us with stories similar to mine: bullying supervisors, illegal terminations, retaliation for speaking up. I listened to each story with the understanding that only comes from experience. "What do I do?" a young man asked me, fighting back tears. "My boss is making my life hell, but I need this job." "First, document everything," I told him, sliding a notebook across my desk. "Then know that you're not alone. There are laws to protect you, and people who will fight beside you." I helped him file complaints with the appropriate agencies, connected him with legal resources, and checked on him regularly as his case progressed. 6 months later, he called to tell me he'd won his settlement and found a better job. "You saved my career," he said. "Maybe my life." "No," I replied. "You saved yourself. I just showed you the tools." These conversations happened weekly, sometimes daily. Each victory felt personal, like I was healing not just from my own experience, but from every injustice I'd ever witnessed. The anniversary of that awful annual dinner approached, and with it, an unexpected invitation. MedTech wanted to honor me at this year's event. "We'd like to present you with our inaugural Workplace Courage Award," Dr. Torres explained, "for standing up to injustice and helping us create positive change." I almost laughed. The symmetry was too perfect to ignore. Standing in the same ballroom, wearing a blue dress that made me feel confident and strong, I looked out at the same audience that had witnessed my humiliation. 2 years ago, I stood on this stage as a broken woman. I began. Someone in a position of power tried to destroy my spirit, my reputation, and my livelihood, but she forgot something important. Truth is more powerful than any title. The applause was thunderous, but more importantly, I saw understanding in people's faces. They got it. They understood what real leadership looked like. "I want to thank Camille Dorsey," I continued, and the room went silent. "Because her cruelty taught me my own strength. Her lies revealed my truth. Her attempt to break me actually set me free." Afterward, people lined up to shake my hand, share their own stories, and thank me for speaking up. "You changed everything here," one employee told me. "People aren't afraid anymore." Last month, I got a letter from an address I didn't recognize. Inside was a handwritten note on plain stationery. "Whitney, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say this. I was wrong. Everything I did to you was wrong. I was insecure, threatened by your competence and the respect you earned from everyone around you. Instead of learning from you, I tried to destroy you. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I hurt so many good people. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely sorry. Camille." I read the letter 3 times, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, and something unexpected, pity. I called Sarah to tell her about it. "That's quite an admission," she said, "almost like a confession." "It is a confession. She's finally telling the truth. Are you going to respond?" I thought about it for days. Finally, I wrote back. "Camille, thank you for your honesty. I accept your apology. I hope you find peace and learn to treat others with the kindness everyone deserves. Whitney." I never heard from her again, but I was glad I'd sent it. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. This morning, I woke up in my sunny apartment, made coffee in my favorite mug, and checked my calendar. 3 worker advocacy meetings, a consultation with someone facing retaliation for reporting harassment, and lunch with Janet, who's now thriving in her career. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Saw your interview in HR Magazine. You're famous." The article was about my work at Hope Harbor and the importance of standing up to workplace bullying. The journalist had asked about my motivation. Everyone deserves to go to work without fear. I'd told her. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. When we stay silent about injustice, we become part of the problem. Looking back now, that awful night at the annual dinner feels like it happened to someone else. The woman who stood humiliated on that stage was smaller, quieter, more afraid. She didn't know her own power. This woman, the one typing at her laptop, preparing to help another worker stand up for their rights, is stronger, wiser, and more purpose-driven than I ever imagined possible. Camille thought she was ending my story that night. Instead, she was just ending the first chapter. The rest of my story, that's mine to write.